Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. We've talked about the issue of mass incarceration on this show many times, and the state of Wisconsin currently has the largest number of African American males behind bars in America, mainly due in part to the state's truth in sentencing law, which is among the toughest in the nation. Under the legislation, prisoners must serve every day of the sentence imposed by a judge. And here to tell us more about their fight to restore communities that have been harmed by mass incarceration is David Liners, who is the State Director of Wisdom, and Reverend Willie Brisco, who is the Wisdom President. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
And I thank you so much for being here. First and foremost, tell us more about Wisdom and your mission.
Sure. Wisdom is we're a network of organizations. We're comprised of faith communities. I think we have members of, I believe it's now 19 different religious traditions that come together, and we work to have a voice to change public policy, to lift up issues that otherwise get lost, but to lift it up really from a faith perspective, from a moral perspective, and to educate our members and to try to create some change that's going to make things more fair.
And Reverend Brisco, what would you say are some of the main issues that you feel need attention when we look at some of the things that are happening right here in our community?
The main issues that probably doesn't get as noticed as they should is the collateral damage that's done when you have individuals serving prison time for nonviolent offense. Even those that are being released for more serious offense, they're coming back to the community. And when you take those individuals from families, a lot of people don't see what happens to those families, the children. Sometimes these individuals are breadwinners, and the moral implication that happens to a household when the mom or dad is gone and the children are left behind.
And you guys make it very clear that people are not statistics. They are just that. They are people. And so sometimes when delivering news and talking legislators, they have to remember that statistics are not just numbers. They are talking about real life people.
Right. I mean, none of us wants to be defined by the worst day you ever had.
Yeah.
You know, by the one thing that you did, and that we start to label people that way. And the other thing that happens is we forget that people change. I mean, we all do. None of us is the same that we were when we were 17. So people change, they evolve, and we really need to take that into account. And we need to give people second chances. We need to account for the fact that people do evolve in their life.
Numbers show that the prison population in Wisconsin has more than tripled since 1990, and half of the African American men in their 30s and some in their 40s in Milwaukee County have been in state prison. And like you just mentioned, that's detrimental to a young family who needs that male figure there, and so it becomes a cycle where maybe a child in that household ends up following in those same footsteps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. What has been sold to the public is that we can keep you safe by putting people behind bars. They don't emphasize the release. If we release these people back in the community without any support, without any tools, then we're just perpetuating this chain of release and incarceration. What that is doing is playing havoc on our state budgets. It's destroying our communities, making them less healthy, and it's giving people the impression that they are not valued, that they are disposable. And you can see that by the hopelessness that sometimes pervades in our community.
Yeah, and all of the things that put us at the top of the list, top of the negative list across the country, Milwaukee is really right there. We talk about this every week.
Yes.
Poverty, unemployment, all of these different things, and it all goes hand in hand. So talk about some of the things that Wisdom's doing to help make a change and keep individuals out of the prison system.
So one thing that we've been advocating for a long time, and we're getting a little bit of traction on, not as much as we need, is just there's a lot of people who just don't belong in jail and prison in the first place. I mean, we have a lot of people with mental health issues or addictions who really belong in treatment centers. I mean, that's where they're going to get better. Like Reverend Brisco said, just sending somebody to jail, you're just postponing the next time they come out and use. I mean, if we don't actually deal with it. So that's something the state is actually catching on to, but we really need to put lots of resources into drug and alcohol treatment and alternatives in Milwaukee. and in Racine and in Kenosha, the places that we have the big incarceration rates. On the back end, we need to stop revoking people back to prison for simple drug offenses, for rule violations, that kind of thing. Half the people who go to our prison are going back, and they haven't committed a new crime. They're going back because they weren't able to live up to some of the really, really strict rules of supervision. So we got to give people a break, and we got to give people some alternatives on both ends of the system to keep people out in the first place, to keep them from going back on the back end.
Yeah, and we just had 2 young men from Community Uprise from UW Milwaukee, and as I told them, they're a great example of people pretty much making a decision to make something positive happen in their lives despite what may have happened in their past. You guys work with Community Uprise and different organizations like that to help push all of the issues and the legislation that you're trying to reform.
Right. I mean, Community Uprise is a group. Within Wisdom, we have a group called Expo, which is ex-prisoners organizing, and actually the Community Uprise guys are part of that as well. Because we really think the people who've been there need to be at the table because they understand the system, they understand what needs to be different.
Yeah, and Reverend Brisco, you've been here in the past. It's really great to have you back because you also work with Micah, and anyone that's familiar with the organization knows that you guys step up on many different levels to make a difference. Specifically, I remember when West Lawn was being done, the first phase, and you were really concerned about the construction and who was on that site and who was being hired, and you guys brought the necessary attention. So when you talk about bringing organizations that have that type of power like Micah and building it to what you said, 19 organizations, you're really talking about putting power in the numbers. Exactly.
What is unique about Wisdom is it has a statewide appeal, and why my presidency has such a great opportunity is I now get to go to different places in the state and actually put a face on what happened in Milwaukee. I worked in corrections, so I saw many people who would have been better served by diversion rather than incarceration that perpetuated a cycle that they couldn't get out of. A lot of people outside of Milwaukee don't understand that. They see it, they see the news, they see some things, statistics, but they can't put faces on it. They can't put families behind those situations. That is why it's good to have a faith-based organization that has not only a local, a statewide, but then sometimes a national appeal that gives people a very good snapshot at what we're facing, what we're working for, and the human face on the people that we're working for.
Yeah, and not to mention Milwaukee being the largest city in the state, you really can't afford to ignore what goes on here because it really does affect the entire state of Wisconsin, whether you're looking at those statistics that we talk about, but it's really important for everyone across the state to understand exactly what is going on here. So you make an excellent point there. You guys had a campaign called 11 by 15, and the goal was to reduce the state's prison population by half at the end of last year. So I'm interested in knowing what was the outcome of that campaign?
Well, we didn't get there. Unfortunately, our prison population has remained pretty static.
Yeah.
You know, I think the progress that we made was calling a lot of attention to the issue of calling a lot of attention. You know, on the front end, it stopped growing. We'll give it, you know, we'll take a little credit for that. We still have the goal of saying we have to cut our prison population in half. It's ridiculous. We have the same population that Minnesota has. We have basically the same demographics as Minnesota, but we have more than twice as many people in prison and more than twice as many people in our county jails.
Wow.
So we still want to hold to that we need to cut it in half. We actually were hoping that our political leadership would be a little bit more responsive than they were the first time around, but we think we're starting to get their attention.
Yeah, and you just keep on trucking, right?
Absolutely.
And so with the 11 by 15 campaign, you've now moved on to ROCK Wisconsin, which stands for Restoring Our Communities Beyond 1115. Tell us more about that.
Well, we didn't want to lose 11 by 15, that momentum. It was ambitious, but we knew that if we set a goal, we had to stick to it. So there was some discussion whether we should abandon that. But it was decided that we need to connect it because we never want people to forget where our origin was and what 11 by 15 stood for. But now with ROC, Restoring Our Communities, we're trying to put a face and to make people see beyond those bars that they have these individuals in, and look at the families that back these people up. Look at the children they're connected to, the communities that they're connected to. If only they were restored, they had jobs, they had homes, they had opportunities to recover, it would actually be a healthier community than it is right now. Because if you look at 53206, the incarceration rate, that zip code, not only in the nation but in the world, is the most incarcerated. Just what happened if you restore individuals back to those communities, give them jobs, give them pride, give them the ability to support their families, and just see the results of that is not even within the imagination to see that you could restore that community.
Yes, and I think that looking at all of the different issues that we face, especially here in the city of Milwaukee, we've got to somehow realize that whatever has been taking place obviously has not worked. So it's time to look at an alternative and see if what you're saying can actually help make a difference, because I don't think there's anyone who wants to see people not be able to do well and progress in their life despite what they've been through. So I love what it is you're doing.
Right, and we need to have some imagination. We need to actually understand these people we have incarcerated, they have a lot of gifts, they have a lot of talents that we're wasting. I mean, that's hurting you and me. That not only are we spending a fortune to keep them in prison, but we're not taking advantage of the what people have to offer. That I think we need to stop looking at big parts of our population as problems and start to see them as resources.
And looking for solutions. So that's what this is all about. I thank you both so much for being here today and just shedding light on all the things that are really important when it comes to giving people a second chance. And not only that, but seeing what can happen when you bring community together to make a difference. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for having us.
It has been a pleasure. David Liners is the State Director of Wisdom, and Reverend Willie Brisco is the President of Wisdom. For more information, you can call 414-831-2070, and that is going to do it for today's show. I'm your host, Andrea Williams, as always. I thank you for watching, and I hope you join us again next week as we take another look at our issues in Milwaukee. Have a great day.